these protests taking shape here in Quebec and Rimouski, I can't find anywhere that's covering the story. Only two sources covering this: True North and Rebel News. No other paper, no other publication is covering the story right now.
TikTok had it.
Yeah, that's not a publication.
I know it's not a publication, but like that's where I'm saying, like, if it wasn't for Rebel News, True North, and TikTok, we wouldn't know about it unless you were on the ground there. Mm-hmm. It was the same thing happening with the protests over in Europe. Yeah. Nowhere was covering it. CBC didn't cover it. CTV didn't cover it. There was maybe a post by the National Post, but even they didn't cover it very much. And I was like, guys, I'm disappointed in you. You're my source right now. So yeah, it is interesting. I know that I came down on Rebel News, but like we need them. Mm-hmm. We do need them. You need a balance.
I think we traumatized the system in February of 2021 or 2022. They don't want to get anywhere near something like this that could galvanize the country. And they don't want anyone to know that this is going on because the feds do not want any more discord than they've already been dealing with in the country. And so these farmers are a little frustrated. We'll read through this True North article a little bit here. It says several hundred farmers from Bas-Saint-Laurent and Gaspésie region traveled to Rimouski to participate in the demonstration by the Federation of the Union of Agricultural Producers of Bas-Saint-Laurent. Dozens of tractors and trailers joined together in a convoy in a circle in front of the office of Minister Mathilde Blanchet-Vézina, who represents the Bas-Saint-Laurent and Gaspésie, Île-de-la-Madeleine regions. Afterwards, the tractors moved to the offices of the Ministry of Agriculture, Fisheries, and Food of Quebec. The demonstrators say they are particularly worried about what the future holds for the next generation of farmers. And so you see some of these videos where they're gridlocking things in front of these government buildings, which I think is the right place to do it.
Yeah,
that's where you want to make an impact. Apparently, CBC Radio Canada was covering it, but I still can't find whatever they were posting about it. They took comments from the protesters. And a dairy producer, Francois Pigeon, as they would say, acknowledges that the protest was inspired by the ongoing European farmers' protests in places like France, Belgium, and Poland. However, Pigeon wanted to make clear that the demonstrators had no intention of creating any social unrest, just merely wanted their presence to be recognized. Probably the most Canadian response I've heard in my life. Like, we just want to shake things up a bit. But what they wanted to make known was the rising cost of suppliers for farmers like fertilizer, fuel, and machinery has led to them being faced with record low profits. One farmer's sign read, "Notre faim sera votre faim," which translates to "Our end will be your hunger."
That's a statement. I mean, and it's exactly right. Like, we rely on farmers in order to feed us. And it's just been everything that's been coming out lately has just been attack on farmers. And it was like, I think we had talked about the World Economic Forum talking about how farming was one of the biggest contributors to climate change.
Yeah.
It's just, farming was basically next to, kicking puppies. And it's like, really? We're demonizing farmers here. The people who put food on your plate. Like, talk about biting the hand that feeds you. So yeah, I totally agree with this. Our end will be your hunger, 100%. Mm-hmm. And I just I actually don't understand where this government thinks that they're going to be helping the system by taking away farming in our country. Like, you will create famine.
So I think I have an idea what the plan is, and you probably know too. The goal from my perspective is push private farming to such a point where they have to sell off their farms. I think the government will be there to buy it all up. I think essentially that is the end goal. That is the definition of conspiracy theory. Like the base definition of a conspiracy theory is that, because I don't really have any tangible proof that's the case. But that if I follow the dots and connect them, that's essentially where this goes. And when you see kind of these different presentations happening in the World Economic Forum and the things that they're pushing, they do want more centralized power, more and more and more. So I do see that kind of being the end goal, very potential, like a huge potential.
I think that I wouldn't say the government would buy the farms, honestly.
Corporations.
I think you'd see corporations. I think you'd see the corporations that are then owned by BlackRock, by State Street. I don't see the governments themselves, because it would be too easy. You'd tie back the government to that. I think you have to have something a little more convoluted, something like a large corporate entity, a Monsanto or what have you, come in. A Bayer would come in and they would buy the farms, and then basically the farmer would be like, it would almost be like fiefdom, like way back in the day when you had lords over the land, and the peasants kind of worked the land and paid rent and food to the farm or to the lords. Yeah. That's kind of what I see just happening over again. It's just a cycle. Yeah. And so, but it's just the lords are now BlackRock and State Street. That's who I think is going to be behind the scenes buying things up, because they have no loyalty to any nation. They don't care. They're just out there to maximize wealth as much as possible.
Yeah. I agree with that. I actually take back my statement. I do agree. I agree with that more. That's more likely what we're going to, just because that's the pattern we've been seeing in general. Yeah.
Well, that's what we're seeing happening in the States with the housing market. And so that's why when you were kind of talking earlier about like mortgage delinquencies and like, don't worry, brighter things are ahead. This is where I get in my like dark space, because I'm like, I see that the private entities are going to come through, and it's going to be like Killam Properties, or it's going to be, you know, some of the smaller names that you recognize that are going to buy up all the homes. But then behind the scenes, they're going to get bought up by a larger entity, who's then again going to be bought up by BlackRock or State Street. Like, you're just going to see basically these big equity firms that just own everything, so that there's not truly individual ownership, and that it's the smaller guys that are going to have to beat their way through the system in order to get space to play.
Absolutely. And this goes back to, this one I think mainly goes back to people who happen to, whatever you do own, whether you be owning Bitcoin, you own some portion of a property, or you own land somewhere, whatever, what have you, whatever you can to keep your autonomy, fight like hell to keep it. If it means that you have to, like, you're scrimping by, trying to find ways to kind of get money freed up somewhere to be able to maintain that autonomy, I think is super crucial. Obviously, a lot of powers out there are trying to kind of crush that you know, single spirit. But like I'm feeling it too. I'm feeling the crunch. I'm feeling the pinch. These interest rates are really tough. We're starting to accumulate more debt. I'm trying to limit how much debt is incurred in our household, but it's getting spooky out there. Mm-hmm. But the little bit I do own, you're gonna have to pry it out of my cold dead hands, 100%.
Yeah, I'm the same way, honestly. We were having a rough go last year, and which is also why our tax return is good. But like this year, now that Jen's back to work, I've got a better job, and I even started my own business on the side so that I can take advantage of contracts that come, and do those on the side as well. Like all these little things that we're doing, like we own the bank owns our house, but we bought it and we're making our payments on it, and we haven't missed a payment. We're always on time with that. So it's these little steps. They just don't feel like anything, but they actually mean a lot. So if that's where you're at, keep going, because that's going to be super important to allow you to have a voice. And something that I thought was interesting, like when we were talking to Reality Shannon, she said, you know, it's my husband owning his own company and doing his own thing, or talking to another creator who he owns his own company, and that was what allowed him to move and take his family with him. Like, you know what I mean? Like these kind of things, like having ownership of your stuff, of your things, of your business, of your means of production, of your home. That's what actually gives you autonomy. Because I do not believe that if you own nothing, you will be happy. I think it's the exact opposite.